A lot of you are wondering, hey, if I had a hockey stick moment, could I actually handle all of those new users? Today, we're going to be talking about how to use render.com, why it's so freaking great, and how to use it for containerization. Now, when I was starting on my software development journey, I wondered, hey, if I had a lot of users, a hockey stick moment, would I be able to handle all of that? And also, how do I make it so that it's easy to make a change to my backend or my front end with a couple of clicks to publish that to my servers deployed worldwide without having to worry about, doing the whole deployment process again, because it can be very complicated. So what is that? Now that's called CI/CD for those of you who don't know, continuous integration, continuous deployment. We're going to go over that as well. And this first part of the video is just an intro, kind of giving you the introduction for those of you who are new. If you want to skip ahead to the actual tutorial, you can check on that slider down below and skip ahead to where the actual tutorial is. But I want to explain a few things because some of you are confused like I was. It is confusing. When you look at how enterprise software is deployed, it becomes a gigantic clusterfuck of Kubernetes, Docker, AWS, permissions, CI/CD pipelines with like dozens of Git hooks and unit tests. So if you're a solo developer, you're a Sigma male grinding away to make your vibe-coded startup that you hope to get acquired for millions of users, you should subscribe for one and like this video because I'm on that same journey too. But I want to kind of reorient you here because if you have these dreams, it's easy to dive into like the Netflix federation of microservices and think that you need some shit like that. You do not. You need containerized software that can scale, and you don't need Docker. Here's why. Render.com uses the common runtimes like Python and Node to automatically containerize your application and scale it horizontally. Render is built on top of AWS, and it wraps and abstracts away all of the awfulness of AWS, all the permission handling. You don't have to do any of that. So that's what we're covering today in this tutorial. And I will be giving you all of the code for a boilerplate Svelte front end with a FastAPI backend. It works together to log you in so that you get a token sent to the front end, and then that front end, you can do what you want to do as a logged in user. You log in with your email, and the database is going to be a PostgreSQL database, which is, by the way, easy to add vectors if you want to build an AI integration and store all your vector database right there. It's easy to do. You just add one plugin. And I'm going to show you how to do all that with render.com, including the PostgreSQL database also hosted on Render. So I think that's enough of an intro. Hopefully you're still with me here. If you are, smash the like button and let's jump into the tutorial. Okay, so prerequisites for this video. You have your FastAPI and you have your front end, which is JavaScript. FastAPI is obviously Python. And you have a PostgreSQL database. So if you don't have those, you can go to the school community in the description and download this full template, which gives you a simple front end where you can log in and it's going to ping the back end and it's going to get that token to authorize you with your username and password. And of course, you can create an account as well, or you can delete an account and you can reset your password via an email update. So it's got a little email integration in there too. And I made this just for you. I think it's a great place to start if you're new to this kind of design pattern, and you could build your whole vibe-coded agent system or your amazing service where you keep track of your clients. Whatever you want to build, you can build it with Svelte, or if you want to use a different JavaScript framework such as React or Vue, you can totally do that. Most of this will apply. It's just that same design pattern is what we're focusing on deploying here so that if you get that hockey stick moment, you can scale. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to clone this repo. So there's going to be a link in the school community where you can get this repo. Okay, so step one here, we already have the backend and front end directories separate, and we have FastAPI. So what we're going to do is focus on these two things right here, ensuring the FastAPI app has proper entry point and dependencies. And we're going to verify the Svelte app builds correctly for production. So the first thing that we're going to do now that we're in the folder that has backend and front end, we're going to cd into backend. We'll start with that. And we will say create and activate env. There we go. And if you're unfamiliar with Python and FastAPI, I'm going to break it down a little bit for beginners here, because effectively what you do is you create a virtual environment, and that virtual environment is going to store all the dependencies, because if you have multiple projects on your computer, you don't want your dependencies all the little packages that run all the stuff in the background to be on the root of your device, because that's going to create conflicts between different versions. Okay, so now we can see that our VNV is activated, and because we can see that little VNV, we know it's activated. So what we're going to do now is we're going to install the requirements. So if I do an ls right here, we can see that we have requirements.txt. And with requirements.txt, we can go pip, because we're using pip, install -r requirements.txt. And that's going to read the file up here called requirements.txt. Okay, there we go. Our backend is installed. So now we've installed our backend, and we have main.py right here, which is our primary entry point for our application. And we have all of the dependencies installed so that all of these imports are actually going to work. So this is, I think, like 360 lines of code. Yeah, just a little over 400 lines of code. And this does all the boilerplate stuff that you might want for your application, where users can log in and be authorized as long as their token is saved on their device. What we're going to do now is we're going to start this FastAPI. So I'm just going to go ahead and let's say Control K and like start FastAPI on port 8000. So we'll just spin that up real quick. And while that's spinning itself up, I'm going to do a split terminal here. I'm going to open a git bash. And for those wondering, yes, this terminal right here, this is a Linux terminal. I'm using WSL because I have a Windows device. You do want to run any kind of Python application that's running a server, should be running in a Linux environment. And I didn't know this at first. I was trying to run my whole environment off of Windows. Don't make that mistake, my friends. These dependencies that it has to load are designed for Linux systems, okay? If you're doing front-end development, that is okay to do on Windows typically, but when it comes to stuff like system-level type dependencies where you're spinning up a containerized computer that's your server, that should be running in a Linux environment, not Windows. While that's spinning up, we're gonna go cd into front-end in this other terminal. Now this is a git bash terminal. You can use like most typical terminals for the front-end. And I'm gonna ls just so we can see what we have inside of here. And we got everything that we need. So, I'll check here on instructions in the README file, and we can see that we're gonna we have to rename this env file. We don't really have to do that right now, but we do need to install the dependencies. So let's just do npm install, and that's gonna install all of the dependencies that are in the package lock folder. So as where Python and FastAPI are gonna be using that requirements.txt, the front end is going to use package and package lock. There we go. So everything installed correctly. There are some vulnerabilities. We're not going to worry about those for the moment. Instead, we are going to move on and we are going to start this server and see if everything comes together. So npm run dev will start our development server. It refreshes nicely every time we make a change. And we're going to go ahead and go to this port. And it failed to find a logo, but here we go. Here is our boilerplate template. So here, I'm gonna go ahead and just log in really quick. And it gave me invalid credentials. Did I forget a digit here? Yeah, so let's go to /login, which is different, by the way, than just this boilerplate page. For some reason, it doesn't show the create new account thing, but we're just gonna go ahead and create an account. We're gonna say example user, and we're gonna type the email as this email, and then we're gonna do a really simple password. I'm gonna register. So it says invalid JSON. So the reason why we're getting these errors and the reason why it's failing is because it can't make a request to an API endpoint it doesn't know about. So that, for example, the database is not set up yet, and the register API is not set up yet. So what we want to do is go into our backend folder and our front end folder and rename the env example just to, sorry, I meant VNV. So env.env folder file. And we're also going to do the same over here. There we go. So now that we have that renamed, in this case, the base URL that it wants to talk to is going to be the backend. And that's going to be port 8000. So because that's working now, if we restart our server, it should work. So same thing here on the back end. Now this is not going to work yet because we haven't actually set up our database. And we aren't going to use the resend API key yet. I might not get to that in this tutorial, but it's pretty easy to do if you want to do it. And that's just for your email authentication where it's going to send an email to confirm a new account. And then your secret key, like this is literally the key. You should obviously change this. Don't leave it the way it is. So now let's just restart the backend. So I'm going to restart the backend. And I went ahead and added my own database. We'll help you set yours up in just a minute, but I added my database just to show how this works. Now, if I add the email and the login, I think we're going to be able to log in. And I've triggered the rate limit. So this is just kind of a nice thing to stop people from just spamming the shit out of your server. There's a rate limit that's going to stop you from spamming it too much. And there we go. I was able to log in. I just had the password wrong earlier. As you can see, we got that nice rate limit. And now we are logged in. It shows our username and email. And that's because this is all stored in PostgreSQL. And in a little bit, I'm going to show you how to set up Beekeeper Studio so you can see your PostgreSQL database right there on your desktop. And it's just a much more visual way to look at your database, which personally I really appreciate. Okay, and the last demonstration I'm going to do here is if I go to my site settings, if I open the cookies and site data, we can see that I have one itty bitty little cookie or site data here. And if I go ahead and I delete this token, which if we look closely, we can actually see the token here. This is the public facing token that you would use to authorize a user. Now this token is given to you by the backend. The backend used my secret key or whatever your secret key is, which is that environment variable, to encrypt something. It's using that phrase as like the seed phrase, and that token now is issued to my device, to my browser from my server, which in a minute will be on AWS in Portland or in Virginia on AWS data centers through Render. And that is what authorizes your device to be able to perform actions. It's going to serve that little token every time we call get current user. You are going to be calling this get current user function, which is going to depend on the OAuth scheme, and it's going to use the token. It's going to verify the token based on what's in the PostgreSQL database. And you'll see here, if I delete this token and I refresh the page, we are now nobody. And it just kicks us out just like that. So you can't see the data because we call get current user and it's like, there's no token. Who are you? Get out. Well, database. And let me be clear that you are always going to call get current user anytime something needs to happen where the user needs to be logged in to do it. For example, accessing their friends list or their personal account details or running an API call that, consumes credits. Those are all cases in which you're going to call get current user on the back end as a part of the route that triggers that function call. So we are going to go to render.com. Now, again, out of the box, what I just did when I demonstrated that won't work for you if you haven't yet set up your PostgreSQL database. I didn't show you mine, but I pasted in my existing database where my email already has username and password. So we're going to be creating 3 services here. We're going to be creating your front end, your back end, and then your PostgreSQL database. I love saying PostgreSQL. It's so fun to say that every time. So we're going to create a new web service. Let's create a new web service. And we are going to, I'm already logged in with my GitHub, so it can see any repositories that I've enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and authorize a new repo. So I'm going to configure this. Okay, I've logged into my account here, and I'm going to add a repository. So repository access, we're going to add a repository. And here it pops up right at the top. And I'm going to go ahead and say save. Now, again, if you're in my school community, that's how you get access to this repository, so you can use it for yourself. Since we've got the best FastAPI repo authorized here, I'm telling render.com that yes, you can get into this code, you can view it, and I'm not going to add it to a new project here because this is just for testing purposes. And what we're going to do first is do the backend. So the backend is going to be Python. When we do the front end, we'll be using Node, but for now, we're just going to use Python. So the root directory should be backend. And as you can see, that updates our build command there. And I'm going to use the $7 a month tier. Again, you can use the free if you want, but I like it to be able to just run continuously. I don't want to have to be waiting a minute for my server to spin up. It should just run. And for our environment variables, we can just add those from the env. And so before I even paste these in here, what we're going to need is we're going to need our PostgreSQL server. So let's go back to the home page for a new service here. I'm going to say new Postgres, and we're going to set this up. So we'll say best fast API example, and we'll just use the free one because we only need a little bit of power. It's not a big deal. And we are going to create the database. And now to connect to the database, I'm just going to go ahead and get this URL right here. And we're going to go over here. And we're actually going to go back to our env here. Okay, I'm just going to paste my database URL in here. I removed my previous one that I was just using. And now we've got our brand new one here. So we're just going to copy this entire file. We're going to go over here and we're just going to paste it in. Say add the variables there, and then boom, it parses them all into here. We're not going to use resend yet. I think we can get away with not using it yet. If we do want to reset somebody's password or make a new account, we're going to need it. And now let's deploy the service. Okay, so I think I screwed something up there. So we'll just try backend right there. I think that's going to be correct. And if it's not correct, we'll just add a little / and it should work fine. Okay, now we play the waiting game. So there we go. It's downloading all of our different dependencies and it's installing the packages, which is great. We're going to need those to run the server. So that's pretty cool. While that's doing its thing, we're going to go and we're going to create a new web service. And this is going to be for our front end. So again, we'll select best fast API. We're going to change the runtime to node. And then we're going to go into the root directory, which is just going to be front end. And it wants to use yarn here, but we're using npm. So this should be npm build and npm install and npm run build, and then npm start is gonna just look for a build and it's gonna run it. And that should be what we need there. So we need our variables here for our production environment. So in this case, I'm gonna have to check on how I do this. Also, we did get an error over here. I'm gonna see why this isn't working. This is actually the first time I've done a deployment with Unicorn, which is, so it's asking about the requirements.txt. So I'm gonna send it the requirements.txt. Oh, okay, so we have to update our requirements.txt. All I have to do to fix this is pop on over to our requirements.txt, and we just go here and we change this to Unicorn. Oh, quick tip, by the way, if you want to amend a commit, that's what I'm about to do. It's super useful. It saves you from having to make a new commit every time you want to push to the origin with a slight small change. So watch on the screen in just a second. I'm going to do a rapid amendment to the commit and redeploy. One more time here. We're going to go over history, amend commit, changes, make sure this is selected, amend the commit, boom, force push the origin. And we should be back momentarily. Now, while this is deploying again, we're gonna go over here and we do need to have our variable for the front end. So if you're keeping up with me, it's a very similar process where the front end now needs to know about the back end. And then I can go over to my front end, I can open the env file, and I can just copy the exact name of that variable, which is the Vite base URL. I'm not even sure if we're using Vite in this case, but AI really likes Vite base URL. All we're going to do to get this URL so that the front end could talk to the back end is we're going to copy it from our web service, our backend, best fast API. I'm going to go over to our front end here, and Vite base URL, it's actually not going to be that. Instead, it's going to be this. And now, if we deploy the service, assuming that this actually deploys, the front end should be able to talk to the back end. And so this will take a few minutes. It's got to run through the packages that were given to it in the package JSON file. And it's got to download those all from the internet, install them the same way that that PIP is installing all those dependencies for the back end. Those are maintained packages by some guy in Alabama. And we're very grateful for his service. Thank you. Okay, looks like there was a little issue here. And just for future reference, what it's telling me is that it's got to be on one line. I think I grabbed something that was on multiple lines, so don't do that. And by the way, if you run into problems when you're deploying, just welcome to the club, okay? Like this always happens. I've never had a deployment be butter smooth. It's never happened for me. So we have a couple problems here. So let's go ahead and again, I'm just gonna paste all of this. Let's just make a new ChatGPT thread. What is wrong? So it's saying the package JSON needs to change. And so to fix that, I'm just gonna go into the package JSON and I'm gonna copy all of that and I'm going to paste it in here. All right, I'm just gonna follow these instructions really quick to make sure that everything is in alignment here. I'm gonna npm install that. Now, by the time you download this, I will have updated the package lock so it won't have this problem. We're gonna force push that to origin. And we may run into, okay, so by the way, it looks like our FastAPI did start correctly, which is really exciting. So let's go over here. And so we do have a couple of problems here when it's trying to create the PostgreSQL database tables. But the good news is that it is running. And kind of the bad news here is that it does trigger an auto deploy on both the backend and the front end if you just update the front end or the backend. And you can disable this in the render auto deployment settings and then just do the deployment for the service, for each service separately on your own. Okay, it looks like it ran this time. So let's go visit our main website and we got a 502. Might just not be ready yet. Hey, there we go. Okay, so we now have what we need. And so I'm gonna go to the /login page because that's what we actually need. And let's create an account. So I'm gonna say example, and I'm gonna say these numbers, I'm gonna register. And it's gonna fail to fetch because I don't think we have set up the necessary, okay, so the reason it failed to fetch is because it was blocked by the cores. Of course it was blocked by cores. So in order to fix that, come back over to main.py, and I'm gonna find our cores policy here, and I'm gonna say, please update my cores. In order to figure out what's really going on under the hood here, we need to go to our PostgreSQL database and actually look at is there an entry for this email address? What I like the best, which is Beekeeper Studio. So we're gonna open Beekeeper Studio, it's free, support the developers if you really like it. I'm gonna copy this external database URL, and I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna say import from URL for my connection, paste that, and let's just enable SSL because if you don't do that, it won't connect. So connect, and there you go, we're in the database. So by the way, keep it secret, this little URL here, because that will get you right in the database. That's about it. I'm gonna open up the users table here, and we can see that there's no data in the users table. So what that tells me is that an account earlier was not actually created. So go to our backend here, and we're gonna take a look at the logs, and let's take a look here. So we still have a bit of a bug here. So I think it fixed it. It's claiming it fixed it. Okay, let's try again, register. Okay, it says it was successful. So let's go ahead and take a look in this database. I'm gonna hit refresh. And if we see an entry, there we go. We have our brand new user. So now if we go back to the login and we add the email address and we say, okay, it looks like we have another cores error. So let's see if we can fix this. Okay, GPT is confident that the bug is solved. And you know me, I'm a true vibe coder, so I'm not gonna question it. I'm just gonna amend that commit. By the way, I'm being kind of tongue-in-cheek here, if I was feeling more serious, I might read through this. I'm trying to do a tutorial. I only have a few more minutes left to make it today, so I am trying to go quickly here. Okay, let's go to the login page here, and let's see if we can log in. And there we go, it worked. We logged in, we can see our username, which is different than the username that I actually set, but it is reading this information, which is really, really amazing. So if I now go over here and I say log out, now we are logged out. And if I want to create a new user, I could say user123, I could enter a new email and say register. And it says that I successfully registered. So And there we go. I've logged in as another user now. And if we open our Beekeeper Studio and we refresh right here, we can see that we have another user right here. So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. This is your first project where you're gonna have a scalable architecture that you can use to have people log in and out and perform authorized actions and deploy to render.com, where now all I have to do is change, my routes and my custom domain, which is pretty easy. You're just gonna go into Namescheap or wherever you bought your domain and add in your CNAME records to ensure that you have that custom domain. And then you're gonna take that same custom domain and you're gonna load it in as your environment variable. The thing that you might need to update will be your CORS information. So if you do have your custom URL, you'll need to go into this right here. You're gonna need to go to CORS and you're gonna need to make sure that the CORS is correctly set right here, okay? And as mentioned, the APIs, the API keys, which is like your port number for localhost versus the actual URL of your service, whether it's your custom domain or the on-render domain, you set that domain, that cool domain name in render as the variable. And then for your development environment, you just leave it as localhost. And that allows you to really easily do your development work locally. And then it's 1 or 2 clicks to commit your changes in GitHub and then push that to the source, and then render immediately updates that. It's the fastest way to deploy. So in this video, I didn't have time to get to minification and obfuscation. The best way to do this is with a Git hook, which I will include, that you can use to start experimenting with this. But you can set that up so that the code actually is minified and obscured. If it's not, you can see almost all of this is going to be just kind of naked code here. We don't have minification and obfuscation, so we can still see the source code. So if you want to make it just much more difficult for people to rip off your application, you want to add minification and obfuscation. Of course, that is in the Git hook that I will provide with this repo. And then you can trigger that Git hook before you make your commits. So I typically make it so that I just type git push in my terminal at the root of the front end. And that's what's going to then trigger the Git hook to actually create a build. And then, well, I think it first does a commit, then it creates the build, and then it amends the commit with the new minified obfuscated build, and then pushes that. And it does it all in like a second. So the result that you get is that you made your commit, but you're gonna have it minified and obfuscated right when it goes out. So guys, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Join the School community and let me know your questions. I will be happy to answer them in most detail on the School community, because that's where we're gonna focus this entrepreneurial journey, where I'm gonna build a software as a service, scale it up, get it acquired for 6 or 7 figures, and I'm gonna show you how to do the same.